Imagine you're standing in a dense forest nearly 30,000 years ago. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Your family is waiting for you to return with food. Suddenly, you spot two animals. On one side, a large deer, quietly grazing in an open field. On the other, a massive lion, watching you from the shadows. Both are made of meat. Both could feed your family. But throughout almost all of human history, our ancestors almost always chose the deer. And that decision wasn't simply about fear, it was about survival. Today, humans eat cows, goats, sheep, chickens, fish, even insects. Across different cultures, almost every prey animal has appeared on someone's dinner plate. But lions, wolves, eagles, tigers, almost never. Why? Do predators taste terrible? Are they poisonous? Or is there a hidden law of nature that makes eating them one of the worst survival strategies ever? The answer begins millions of years before the first human ever walked the earth. It begins with the invisible system that controls every living thing on this planet. Nature is built like a pyramid. At the very bottom are plants. Unlike animals, plants don't need to hunt. Using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, they create energy through photosynthesis. They are the foundation of nearly every ecosystem on Earth. Next come herbivores. Animals like deer, cows, rabbits, zebras, and antelopes survive by eating those plants. Above them sit carnivores. Wolves hunt deer. Lions hunt zebras. Eagles catch rabbits. Sharks hunt seals. And at the very top are apex predators, animals with almost no natural enemies. At first glance, this seems perfectly balanced. But hidden inside this pyramid is one of biology's most important rules. Scientists call it the 10% rule. Imagine a huge field filled with grass. That grass stores around 10,000 calories of energy from the sun. A deer spends its entire life eating that grass. But surprisingly, only about 1,000 calories become part of the deer's body. Where did the other 9,000 calories go? They were burned. Walking, running, keeping warm, growing, breathing. Simply staying alive consumes enormous amounts of energy. Now imagine a wolf hunting that deer. The wolf doesn't receive the full 1,000 calories. Again, only around 10% becomes part of the wolf's body. The rest disappears through movement, digestion, and survival. If another predator somehow hunted that wolf, only about 10% would remain again. Every step higher in the food chain loses nearly 90% of the available energy. Nature is incredibly inefficient when producing predators, and that changes everything. Have you ever noticed something strange while watching wildlife documentaries? There are always huge herds of deer, hundreds of antelope, thousands of fish, but only a handful of lions, only a few wolves, maybe one eagle flying across an entire valley. That isn't an accident. Nature simply cannot support large numbers of predators. Think about one lion. To survive, it must constantly hunt zebras, wildebeest, buffalo, and other herbivores. Those herbivores survive only because millions of plants grow every year. One predator depends on hundreds of prey animals. Those prey animals depend on countless plants. The higher you climb the food chain, the fewer animals exist. That means predators are naturally rare. And for ancient humans, rare food was bad food. Imagine spending 3 days tracking one dangerous lion, only to fail. Now imagine those same 3 days hunting peaceful deer grazing together in open grasslands. Which strategy gives your family the better chance of surviving winter? The answer is obvious. Ancient humans weren't hunting for excitement. They weren't collecting trophies. Every hunt was a gamble between life and death. And over thousands of years, humans learned something that completely changed civilization. The safest food is usually the food that eats plants. Ancient humans didn't understand biology. They had never heard the words food chain or energy transfer. But they didn't need science to recognize a pattern. Generation after generation, they watched nature closely. They noticed that herbivores were everywhere. Large herds crossed grasslands every season. Rivers overflowed with fish. Wild goats climbed mountains in huge numbers. But predators were different. You could walk for days without seeing a single lion. A wolf pack controlled hundreds of square kilometers. An eagle might spend its entire day searching for just one rabbit. Predators weren't rare because they were weak. They were rare because nature simply couldn't afford to make many of them. Every predator represented thousands of meals already consumed. Every lion standing in the African savanna was built from hundreds of zebras, thousands of kilograms of grass, and years of accumulated energy. Without realizing it, ancient humans were solving an economic problem. If your goal is feeding an entire tribe, you don't chase the most dangerous animal. You chase the animal that gives you the greatest reward for the least amount of risk. That simple decision eventually changed human history forever. Why we farm cows, not lions. Around 12,000 years ago, something incredible happened. Instead of chasing food, humans decided to grow it. Agriculture transformed civilization. Villages became cities. Cities became kingdoms. But when it came time to domesticate animals, humans made a very interesting choice. Cows, goats, sheep, pigs, chickens. Not a single major civilization attempted to build farms full of lions or wolves. The reason wasn't courage. It was mathematics. Imagine trying to raise just one tiger. That tiger doesn't eat grass. It doesn't eat grain. It eats meat. To feed one tiger for years, you first have to raise dozens of deer or hundreds of smaller animals. Those animals must also be fed every single day. The amount of land, water, food, and labor needed becomes enormous. Now imagine trying to raise 100 tigers. You would first need thousands of prey animals. Those prey animals would require massive fields of crops. Those crops would require huge amounts of water and farmland. Very quickly, the system becomes impossible. Nature has already done the calculation. Predators are the most expensive meat on Earth. Even today, modern zoos spend extraordinary amounts of money feeding large carnivores every year. A dairy farmer can feed an entire herd using grass and stored crops. A tiger farmer would first need to produce mountains of meat. The economics simply don't work. But cost wasn't the only problem. Even if humans somehow solved the food issue, another invisible danger was waiting inside every predator. And unlike sharp teeth, you couldn't see it coming. The poison that climbs the food chain. Imagine dropping one tiny drop of mercury into a lake. That amount seems harmless. The water barely changes. Nothing dramatic happens. But nature works differently than we expect. Tiny algae absorb microscopic amounts of mercury. Small insects eat the algae. Small fish eat hundreds of insects. Large fish eat hundreds of smaller fish. Seals eat those fish. Finally, a polar bear or a killer whale eats the seals. The mercury never disappears. Instead, it builds. Every meal adds a little more. Every level of the food chain becomes more concentrated than the one below it. Scientists call this process biomagnification. It is one of the most important reasons why apex predators often contain the highest concentrations of dangerous toxins found anywhere in nature. Mercury isn't alone. Lead, PCBs, industrial chemicals, and pesticides can all move through food chains in exactly the same way. The animal at the very top pays the highest price. And if humans choose to eat that predator, sometimes they pay the price too. The bald eagle mystery. In the middle of the 20th century, something strange began happening across North America. The bald eagle, one of the world's greatest hunters, started disappearing. At first, nobody understood why. There was still plenty of food. Their forests hadn't completely vanished. Yet, every year, more nests failed. More chicks died before they could even hatch. Scientists eventually discovered something shocking. The problem wasn't the birds. It was everything the birds had been eating. For decades, farmers had sprayed a pesticide called DDT on crops. Rain washed tiny amounts of that chemical into rivers and lakes. Small insects absorbed it. Fish ate the insects. Larger fish ate hundreds of smaller fish. Then, bald eagles hunted those fish. Each meal carried only a tiny amount of DDT. But over many years, those tiny amounts became highly concentrated inside the eagle's body. The chemical changed the way calcium was used to build eggs. Instead of producing strong shells, the eggs became paper thin. Many cracked under the mother's own weight before the chicks were born. By the early 1960s, America's national bird was dangerously close to disappearing forever. The eagle had done nothing wrong. It simply reached the top of the food chain. Nature had concentrated every poison beneath it right into its body. Eventually, DDT was banned in many countries. Slowly, the bald eagle population recovered. But the lesson remained. The higher an animal stands in the food chain, the greater the chance it carries everything the ecosystem has collected below it. When explorers learned the hard way. History also contains another warning, one that happened in the freezing wilderness of the Arctic. Early explorers often struggled to find food. Sometimes there were no fish, no deer, no birds, only polar bears. Many believed killing a polar bear would solve their hunger. After all, it was a massive animal. It contained hundreds of kilograms of meat. But experienced Arctic hunters gave a strange warning. Never eat the polar bear's liver. For years, people thought it was just another survival myth. It wasn't. Modern science later revealed the truth. Polar bear liver contains extraordinarily high levels of vitamin A. Because polar bears consume seals, and seals consume fish, the vitamin becomes concentrated over years of hunting. Eating only a small amount of that liver can cause severe vitamin A poisoning. Victims may suffer intense headaches, vomiting, skin peeling, blurred vision, and in severe cases, it can become life-threatening. Once again, the danger wasn't because polar bears were evil. It was because they stood at the very top of nature's food chain. Everything beneath them eventually accumulated inside their bodies. When explorers learned the hard way, history also contains another warning, one that happened in the freezing wilderness of the Arctic. Early explorers often struggled to find food. Sometimes there were no fish, no deer, no birds, only polar bears. Many believed killing a polar bear would solve their hunger. After all, it was a massive animal. It contained hundreds of kilograms of meat. But experienced Arctic hunters gave a strange warning. Never eat the polar bear's liver. For years, people thought it was just another survival myth. It wasn't. Modern science later revealed the truth. Polar bear liver contains extraordinarily high levels of vitamin A. Because polar bears consume seals, and seals consume fish, the vitamin becomes concentrated over years of hunting. Eating only a small amount of that liver can cause severe vitamin A poisoning. Victims may suffer intense headaches, vomiting, skin peeling, blurred vision, and in severe cases, it can become life-threatening. Once again, the danger wasn't because polar bears were evil. It was because they stood at the very top of nature's food chain. Everything beneath them eventually accumulated inside their bodies. Do people ever eat predators? At this point, you might be wondering, if eating predators is such a bad idea, then has anyone ever done it? The answer is Yes. Throughout history, people have occasionally eaten predators. In times of famine, war, or extreme survival situations, humans have eaten wolves, bears, crocodiles, sharks, and even big cats. But notice something important. These animals almost never became a regular source of food. Why? Because surviving on predator meat is completely different from building an entire civilization around it. A starving person will eat almost anything. A successful civilization chooses food that is reliable, easy to find, safe to raise, and efficient to produce. That's why history is filled with cattle ranches, sheep farms, goat herds, pig farms, and chicken coops. Not lion farms, not wolf ranches, not tiger villages. Even cultures that hunted bears usually did so only occasionally. They never depended on bears the way farmers depended on cows. Nature had already made the decision. Humans simply followed it. The hidden cost of being an apex predator. Being at the top of the food chain sounds powerful. No natural enemies, no fear, complete control. But evolution always demands a price. A lion must spend enormous energy hunting. A shark may swim hundreds of kilometers searching for prey. An eagle can wait hours before catching a single rabbit. Every failed hunt burns precious calories. Sometimes predators starve to death simply because they fail too many times. Herbivores face danger from hunters, but predators face danger from hunger itself. This is why there are so few apex predators compared to prey animals. Nature can support thousands of deer, but only a handful of wolves. Millions of fish, but very few sharks. Hundreds of zebras, but only a small pride of lions. The pyramid always becomes narrower at the top. And that's exactly why humans almost never built their diets around predators. They simply weren't abundant enough. The science never changed. Thousands of years have passed since humans first picked up wooden spears. Today, we have supermarkets, factories, modern farming, and global food production. Yet our diets still follow exactly the same biological rules. The beef in your grocery store comes from animals that eat plants. Chicken feed is mostly grains. Farmed fish are carefully managed to reduce cost and improve efficiency. Modern agriculture still avoids raising large predators for meat, not because it's impossible, but because it makes no biological or economic sense. The laws of nature that guided ancient hunters still guide modern civilization. Technology changed. The food chain never did. The real reason. So, why don't humans eat predators? The answer isn't a single reason. It's a combination of millions of years of biology, evolution, and survival. First, predators are incredibly inefficient sources of food. Because of the 10% rule, every lion, wolf, or eagle represents an enormous amount of energy already lost lower in the food chain. To create one predator, nature must first create hundreds of prey animals. And to create those prey animals, it must grow countless plants. By the time energy reaches an apex predator, almost all of it has disappeared. For ancient humans, hunting predators simply wasn't worth the effort. The reward was too small, and the risk was far too high. Second, predators are dangerous. Unlike deer or sheep, carnivores are professional hunters. They've evolved for one purpose: to kill. A broken arm, a deep bite, or a single infected wound could mean death in the prehistoric world. Our ancestors didn't hunt for glory. They hunted to survive. Every unnecessary risk reduced the chances of seeing another sunrise. Third, science has revealed something ancient people could never see. The higher an animal stands in the food chain, the more toxins it can accumulate over its lifetime. Mercury, lead, industrial chemicals, and pesticides don't simply disappear. They move upward through the food chain, becoming more concentrated at every level. By the time those substances reach an apex predator, their concentration can be many times higher than in the animals below. The story of the bald eagle showed the world exactly how devastating that process can become. Even today, health experts often advise limiting consumption of some large predatory fish because of elevated mercury levels. Nature remembers everything, and apex predators carry that memory inside their bodies. Finally, predators are simply too rare. A grassland can support thousands of grazing animals, but only a few hunters. That balance has existed for millions of years. Humans didn't invent it. We adapted to it. When agriculture began, we domesticated animals that converted plants into food efficiently. Cows, goats, sheep, pigs, chickens. Those animals helped build civilizations because they could feed millions of people. Predators never could. The next time you see a lion chasing a zebra, or an eagle diving toward a rabbit, remember, you're not just watching a hunt. You're watching millions of years of evolution, an invisible system where every bite of food carries energy upward, while every step higher makes life more difficult. Being the king of the food chain sounds powerful, but in nature, power comes with an enormous cost. Predators spend their lives searching for food, risking injury, competing with rivals, and carrying the highest burden of everything that has passed through the ecosystem below them. Ironically, the animals that rule the wild are often the last animals humans choose to eat. Not because they're untouchable, not because they're mythical, but because nature itself made them one of the least practical meals on Earth. Sometimes, the smartest survival strategy isn't hunting the strongest animal. It's understanding the rules that have governed life for millions of years. And those rules quietly shaped the history of our species long before the first civilization ever existed. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden science behind everyday life, don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the most fascinating mysteries aren't hidden in space or beneath the ocean. They're hiding in the simple questions we never think to ask.